So I'm Joshua Abernathy, the owner of Anew Bespoke leather goods, born and raised in Compton, California. Like, growing up here is dope. Like, I mean, there was definitely, the way I could put it, like, there's stuff that I experienced that I know definitely changed the way I thought, and, you know, especially made it different than where I was going to school. Because my mom didn't want me going to school out in the district, which, looking back on it, like, I was, you know, kind of glad of that, just because at that time in the 90s and stuff, it wasn't a whole lot available in the schools. So, you know, when my dad was born and raised in Compton, when he went to high school, it was different, you know, so they had auto shop, you had all these guys that were coming out, becoming mechanics and stuff, but for my generation, it wasn't all that, you know, so it was more gang stuff. So my mom just kind of kept me wherever she worked, you know, so, but being out here and still having my friends out here when I was out just growing up, like, it was no different than the other kids, you know, in different areas. The main difference is, you know, the stuff that you have to deal with. You know, you see people, you know, die younger, you know, you see gangbanging, you see crackheads, you see all that stuff that's a part of the city, but the city is still beautiful. Like, the people out here are still beautiful. So it's always, no matter where I went, always had some big part of me, you know. At one point in high school, I had started my own board company. So Fluent Skateboards, a lot of the guys that I was around, you know, knew about that. And I put a lot of my friends on the team at that point in time. And high school, I was in Cerrito, so another district at that point in time. And a lot of those guys rode for me, you know, just started always was trying to build my own thing, you know? And that kept me out of a lot of trouble. You know, I started skating at around 12, and I remember just hustling to try and get my first board, you know, like saving up, recycling, you know, got my first board. My brother wound up getting me another one for Christmas. And then I sold the board that I got, like just the deck, and then wound up using that money to go and get the trucks and wheels. So I had to piece up to it all, you know, but that kept me out of a lot of stuff, you know, because it gave me something to focus on. And then it also kind of, I guess, filled the void that I needed as far as like being a real aggressive kid, because I wanted to play football. My mom didn't want me to play tackle. You know, we used to be out there with those guys, like just fighting and stuff, like playing around, and I just needed something that was a little bit more aggressive than, like, I never was into basketball, you know. So that wound up being what was my thing, you know, that kept, you know, gave me something that I could create with, you know. And I think that was my first real experience outside of like sketching that got me into really creating something, because I was able to create these tricks, you know, and at a certain point create these memories with photos. Me and my friends were shooting photos of everything, until I wound up reaching that level of being like on the amateur level and just filming and all that stuff. So contests. I've just always been that type that liked to build, you know, whether it be with my hands or else just build something bigger than just me. So even when I was younger, I could remember like selling brownies, you know, like always trying to sell something to kind of get money. And at a certain point with my skating, early on, like after, I want to say when I was in high school, I saw all these guys around me who had a lot more talent than I did. You know, just naturally, these guys could pick up stuff. And I was good, but the way these guys skated, I just feel like it took less effort for them. So I was looking at also just how things were in the industry, like of how hard it was to try and get your foot in the door, because it wasn't so much how good you were, it was more so like who you knew. And if you didn't know anybody, if you weren't around a bunch of guys who were already really good and already sponsored and had connections with representatives from companies and stuff like that, then it was gonna be harder for you to get in. So with all of us, we didn't know anybody like that. So I was just like, we could either fight to try and get in as individuals, or we could all fall in line together and, you know, do our own thing, you know. And like, it actually worked, kind of, you know, like we started our own thing. We started our video premieres, and like locally, people started to really look at us as a group, you know, like Team Fluent, you know. And we had at one point kids sending us their sponsor me videos, and I'm thinking like, damn, I don't have money to, you know, put all you guys on or whatever. But it was dope to see that. That was my first taste of like us really creating something and people responding to it, you know, so that always stuck with me. And it was just like to give us all the opportunity to come in as united, you know, on some Wu-Tang stuff, you know, come in united, you know. And I didn't really have a vision to do anything else. Like skating was my life for, you know, from the time I was 12 to 26. So I just kind of started, you know, I told my grandma, she's been a seamstress her whole life. I was like, I'm gonna start, you know, sewing with you when I slow down or whatever. And then since I was forced to slow down, you know, I didn't have any, you know, sponsors. No one kind of helped me out. I had to try and pay bills. I was like, well, you know, let me just spend time with her. So I just started spending more time with my grandma and just sewing, you know, altering my own clothes. I've always been real picky about the way my pants fit. So I just started altering my pants and everything. And I picked up on it quick, you know? So, and it was nothing really that was completely new. I had always kind of sewn some stuff. I was real picky, particular just about the way things were. If I ever put a patch on the backpack when I was a kid, I wanted to sew it. I didn't know how to sew, you know, but I was sewing it in some way that was gonna hold more than just ironing it, you know? And after a little while, like my grandma just saw like that I was really getting good at it. So I just kept focusing on that and really didn't have any plans on it until I had made a jacket, or I had altered a jacket that had a mix of like army material and sweater, and then I posted up on Instagram. It's just, you know, just putting it up to show. And someone asked me how much would I sell it for, and I was just like, dang, like that was kind of like, it kind of clicked, like, okay, this could actually probably be something, you know. And then from there I just kept building, and through just getting comfortable sewing and altering people's jeans and stuff, you know, and people just coming up to me having me tailor their clothes. I had some friends who were really into vintage denim. So they were like, you know, like, oh, we're going to this tailor shop in downtown Long Beach. All right. I went with them and I saw the guy making a belt, and it was a full leather belt, you know, but it was a basic construction belt, you know, and kind of something similar to this. And that was what made me think like, dang, I could probably do that. And from there it escalated, you know. February 17th, I made my first belt, which is this one right here. You know, the very first piece. Ever since the beginning, I've been doing that samurai tip just because I like the look of it. And it actually kind of was like it showed how determined I could be with it, you know, because that was the first piece. But then when I was making that piece, there was a blackout, like in the middle of me making the belt. So all the lights shut out. And I was just sitting there thinking like, all right, well, should I just stop? But I was like, nah, like I'm almost there. So I just had a flashlight in my mouth and was sitting there, you know, piecing the rest of the belt together until it was done, you know. And then I was like, just remember being real excited about it, you know. And after that, it just escalated. I just went from belts into trying to make wallets and making bags and aprons for barbers, and it just kept going, you know, one project to the next, you know. The name Anew Bespoke, it's really just two meanings broken apart. So bespoke is Old English for speaking on someone's behalf. But yeah, I got it from, I really respect the craftsmanship of, you know, Italian tailors and all the Neapolitan tailors. So there's the bespoke suit where they make it by hand, you know, and those are the suits that get really high into the price. I'm not really into suits like that, but I just love the craftsmanship. So I like that name because that's in Old English. What it means is you're speaking on someone's behalf through your craftsmanship, right? And Anew, because the way I got into it, when I started sewing, I was altering all my old skate clothes. So I didn't have money to really go out and buy, you know, designer stuff. I was just taking what I had, you know, and flipping all the pieces to give it a look that fit now, like the shoes that I wanted to wear, since I wasn't wearing skate shoes so much. And so basically I was making my clothes anew. You know, and that's also kind of a play on, you know, the scripture, like Christ came to make things anew, you know. So I chose the phrase anew rather than just saying new or, you know, refreshed or whatever, because anew just had more of a regal fit to it that, you know, and it had more layers of depth to it in the meaning. So I liked that whole idea of making something anew, taking something old and making it anew. And I call it Anew Bespoke because it's a new way of creating bespoke goods. And you're still using the same techniques, but it's stemmed from taking something rugged and refining it, you know. So that all kind of ties into the tagline too of Anew Bespoke, which is rugged, refined, you know. And it all plays back into the city that I came from, you know. Compton was rugged, but I want to give the city a new image, you know, like rugged, refined. It is rugged, but there's a beauty to it at the same time, you know. it wasn't until after I started really getting into sewing that I realized, like, I already knew that my grandma and her sister sewed, but then it's like I'm finding out that we had this line of like tailors, you know, in our history that I was unaware of, you know. So it's like, yeah, man, I'm taking everything that I've appreciated with skating. So even down to just like, one thing that's crazy, if you look at fashion, skate culture really does drive a lot of fashion. You know, so a lot of these looks that people are taking on, like for a while when everyone was wearing shoelace belts, they didn't even know where that came from. That, like, Lil Wayne was doing it, but that started with us, you know? So, and that's just one of those things where I think, like, I'm taking the fact that, like, all the stuff that I did with the one thing that I left behind, though, in a sense, which I'll get into it again later, but the whole having someone else manufacture everything, like, I left that and I just was like, I'll do it myself. You know, I'm taking that ability that desire to just create something and creating it with these leather goods, but then also taking the understanding that you have to create a movement. You know, you have to create something that people want to be a part of. Like with Fluent, we created a team, and people wanted to be a part of the team because they saw the variety, you know, the versatility. And that's another thing that I noticed with that I'm trying to apply to this. You know, the brand is an inclusive brand. You know, the prices are going to be higher, but I'm not restricting myself from making other things. You know, like there are people who ask me like, oh, can you give me a belt? And I'll make them a belt that's more of a standard belt. It's not going to be, you know, this $300 piece, but maybe it's a $90 piece, you know, but it's still going to give them the same quality, but at the same time, just have a more rugged feel to it, something that's everyday wear, you know? And I love that ability to have versatility within a brand, you know, which is why the brand isn't even just leather goods, you know, like the leather goods are the main focus of it, but I'm still doing tailoring that's incorporated in it as well, altering people's clothes, you know, making people's clothes anew, you know, and changing the entire style of it, you know, to certain pieces. So it's just that being able to, you know, flip something, you know, and that being able to create and be creative with it. And that's the main thing that I'm bringing with it, you know. It's just bringing from that experience is just like keeping that rugged feel to it. Like it's luxury, but some of the pieces are going to have more of a rugged masculine feel to it because that's me, you know. That's skateboarding. That's the city I came from, you know. It's meant to be durable. It's meant to last. It's part of the reason I chose leather, you know. I look at my life growing up and I've always been an oddball in my neighborhood, you know. So I was the kid that would be out in the street on rollerblades, you know, with a hockey net set up because I wanted to play hockey. You know, like I told you, I was real aggressive when I was growing up. So I liked the idea of like being able to go out and hit people. I didn't know how to ice skate. You know, I still can't say I've been once probably in my whole life, you know, but hockey's expensive. So we can't afford that really in most cases. Like if you grow up in our hoods, like we don't really have access to that so much. So that was something that I wanted to do, never really had the access to. But the thing that's crazy about it, my sister actually told me this, like I want to say about a few months ago, we were talking and she just came out of nowhere and was like, you know, one thing I have to say I respect about you is the fact that no matter how much we talked about you, you know, how much we, you know, called you white boy or whatever, you know, people said that about you because you just were different. She was like, you always just did you. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I knew I was comfortable. Like the way I look at it, as long as I'm not doing anything that goes against God, then I'm in my element, you know, I'm where I'm supposed to be. So people can say certain things like, oh, you know, like that stuff, like what I got a lot when I was skating, that's white boy stuff, you know, like you could say that, but I got as good at it, you know. If you see some of the biggest skaters aren't white, you know, so it's just one of those things like that. It's really taking yourself out of the box, you know, because the world's going to put you in a box, you know, and if you just stay there, then that's going to be it. That's your cap. You'll never be able to be anything more. You'll easily be able to become something less, but you'll never be able to be anything more. So that's the biggest part, is just taking our communities out of boxes of, well, this is all that's in here. And that's a big part of the reason why I intentionally always brand the product like Anew Bespoke, handcrafted in Compton. Because right now, the image that people have in Compton is old English Compton font. You go there, you'll get shot, or it's a novelty. You know, you can go over there and, hey, we're taking photos next to the Compton sign, you know, just because, oh, we're showing that we've passed through or whatever. And it's not because they've actually have a respect for it. Like, they don't have a love for the city. Like, I have a love for the city. I have a love for the people in the city. And it stems from just being like, yeah, I'm a part of the city, even though I may not sound like how people would expect, you know, a person from Compton to sound. Or, you know, I may not dress, I may have never dressed the way people would expect someone from Compton to have dressed. But it's like, that's not how everyone in Compton sounds. It's not how everyone in Compton speaks. Like, it's the hood, but you have a lot of people that are, you know, first generation, you know, immigrants from the South, you know, so they have a different way of carrying themselves and the way that they have manners and everything. So it all kind of stems from the home, you know, and that's one of those things. Like, if you don't have solid family figures in your home, then yeah, you're more likely to get caught up in some garbage. But that's just like anywhere. That's like, so it's just about removing that frame of the box from that the world's put on us, you know, like, that ain't all of us. The biggest why is to break down those barriers and let people actually see, like, this is what's possible. And not just the people in the city to see what's possible for themselves, but the people outside of the city to see that there's something beautiful that can come from the city as well too, you know, so that they understand, like, yeah, there's a luxury brand that lives in Compton. And yes, there are luxury people that live in Compton, like, in luxury as far as their character, you know, so that's the biggest why. This is actually the very first wallet I ever tried to make. Now, wasn't the very first piece that kind of opened me into leather goods, but this was the one that I was like, okay, I wanted to do the most. And I just did it on my sewing machine just to kind of practice with it, and it just kind of escalated. So I found some tools that I could use for it, started stitching with just the basic pieces, just wrapping leather, didn't even have any real cuts to it. And then it just gradually started to look more and more like a wallet, you know. But this is when I started really experimenting with putting the edge paint. The wallet was just too thick though, wasn't cutting any leathers. And this is when, you know, current stage, the stitching gets more refined, the leather choice gets better, the detailing gets better. You know, I started experimenting more with exotic skin. So this is lizard skin in here, and all the slots in this are lined. So this actually is the evolution of the wallet, and this is a prototype of one of the pieces that's going to be coming out in my exotics collection when I do all the exotic wallets. So that's that piece. This is the very first belt that I made, the one that was telling you I made in the blackout. And for a while, I still do it on some pieces. I would mark everything with the 17 because February 17th, 2017 was when I made the first belt. So it's just one of those things. It's that number that I always kind of keep in line. And for this belt, I always tally up the belts that I'm making. So even though this is only about 50 belts or so, it's just a lot of pieces that I've just kept making, you know, and some pieces that I may miss some notches and stuff. But yeah, this was just the original piece, you know, the double keeper. Samurai tip has always been the cut that I wanted my pieces to have, just because I feel like a samurai sword shape has that rugged, refined feel to it. You know, it's that a sword is deadly, you know, it's used as a weapon, but at the same time, there's a beauty to it. You know, the way that they do it, especially in like Japanese culture, the way that they make the swords. It's funny because in modern times, there's a guy who actually makes knives, yeah, or scissors, I mean, and he makes the scissors the same way they used to make the sword. So he's hitting there, putting it in the fire and hammering it.
It's more balance.
Exactly.
The aesthetics of it.
Exactly. You know, so it's a deadly weapon. So it's rugged, but at the same time,
it's also an art form.
Exactly. You know, so those pieces. The main piece that I'm working on right now is actually a duffel bag. So like those are some of the sketches that I've been doing just to kind of figure out the way I wanted to lay it out and everything. And just been gradually working away at it, because this is still a prototype, so this is more so for myself, you know, and then I've just been working on it in between other people's projects. But I'll be real hyped when this is finished, because this is going to have that Anew Bespoke Compton branding on it. with that orange that I always use, and the samurai cut detailing again. That's basically our block. You know, that's our indicator that the product is from us. You know.
Cool.
So yeah.
Cool.
Another piece that I'm gonna be really excited about. So keep your eye out. Black Friday. Cannon, a rapper from Compton that I really rock with his music. He's got some dope stuff out. We're doing collaborative piece. Me and a soccer brand, Ochiki. I'm altering this. So they did their portion. Now I'm gonna be altering the rest of it with the tailoring, adding in special pieces to give it that real flair to the jersey. He's a fan of soccer jerseys, so we have an upcoming collaboration that we're gonna release before the year is out. So his is gonna be like the first piece that gets out. We wanted him to have it for one of his videos that he's shooting on the 20th. So that's something I'm excited about, you know, to work with someone from my city too, you know, and get him something, and someone who actually, it's rare that I like people's music, so when I hear someone who actually has a good sound, I'm like, all right, like, and he's from my city, so it's, you know.
And how important is it to connect and like network?
That's a huge importance, you know. But the biggest thing for me, like, I'm kind of an introvert in a sense, you know. I don't really, you know, get out and talk to a whole lot of people. But so the biggest thing for me, I feel like with that networking, it has to be authentic. You know, like, there's a lot of people, because like for a long time I kind of just be to myself, you know, just working on stuff, and then I'd have a lot of people be like, oh, you know, you need to go out and talk to this person, that person, that person, and I'm like, but I need it to be authentic, you know. I don't want to just go places just to talk to people. And there are times where I feel like if you find that the most powerful connections you'll make in like that communicating is going to be the people who it's all authentic with, you know. So when you guys have that real common interest, when you have a common goal, like part of the reason I like this particular song he's talking about, on like what he's talking about, I'm like, some of the things he's saying about like clothing brands and stuff, I'm like, it's clicked already with me, you know. So I'm listening to it like, yeah, that's that he needs a piece for that.